Welcome back to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Today is Monday, September 11th, September 10th, 2018. Getting ahead of myself. Let's take a look at our space weather conditions tonight. Let's go ahead and refresh that, make it nice and fresh. 501.7 kilometers per second is our solar wind speed with a density of 7.2. Taking a look at the SDO, we're looking at AR 2721, and it is decaying and it is quiet at this moment. It has shrunk to sunspot number 12, still sitting at 141 days without sunspots. And our KP indices, right now we are currently in a G1 geomagnetic storm. We are at a 5, and the 24-hour max is also at a 5. So the solar wind speeds don't look like they're going to elevate a whole lot more. Here is the SDO. That is the sunspot and the coronal hole that is causing this current solar storm. Taking a look at the SDO in motion. Whoa. What was that? Well, there is actually a article about that. Maui, you did have that up, didn't you?
It was right next to...
Oh, it's right next to it. Okay, great. So... looking at the SDO, coronal hole we see in the northern part of the sun, the one that's given us the geomagnetic storm has turned well away from us. We are now seeing that. Other than that, we might have a little bit of something going on right here that could develop a little bit more. Nothing serious, and I don't see anything on the horizon that would create any concerns for another sunspot. Now, possibly some minor activity in that area, but nothing yet that would speak out to a sunspot. A lot of you are probably looking at this image right now and are wondering what is passing the sun. Well, the perfect explanation for this, it's been seen before. NASA's SDO spots 2 lunar transits in space. And what I like about this article is it gives the video in motion, the date and the time, and this is almost exactly, well, this is today's here, but this also discusses on why this happens and how it happens. But I'll leave the link in the description just in case if anyone was wondering what we were looking at. That is earthshine shadows moving across. It's nothing foreign or anything like that. Or it could be just the moon and the earth, or just...
No, it's the moon.
It is the moon.
Two lunar transits.
Oh, that's what it says. 2 lunar transits, yes.
That's all that it is. It's
Okay.
Earth.
So not earthshine. Sorry about that. It is a lunar transit.
Not Earthshine.
No. All right. It's been a long day, guys. It's Monday. Apologize. Thankfully, I have an awesome producer and partner in crime like Mari. Who's a dork?
Me.
Well, you are a dork, but I love you. All right. Our TSI reading for September 2nd, 2018 came in at a 1360.746. Let's take a look at some articles tonight. We have a lot to talk about. First, I'll go ahead and touch base with this storm here. Hurricane Olivia approaching Hawaii, preparing for intense flooding, rainfall, damaging winds, large and dangerous surf, and storm surge as well. Hurricane is the 15th named storm in the Pacific this year. It's intensifying as it tracks towards Hawaii. And this is not going to be... Now, if there's any silver lining to this, is that the current track, the Big Island, may not get the most intense part of the rain. But the part that will get a dose of some rain are the smaller islands as well. Audio okay?
Some people are saying it's low. I'm gonna
It's turned up all the way.
Yeah, weird. I don't know.
I think I know what that is, Mari. Don't worry about that. Anyway, so here we have on right now we're looking at winds at 84 miles an hour. So it's a Category 1. The general motion is expected to continue through early Monday, followed by a turn towards the west-southwest starting late Monday. This west-southwest motion is expected to continue through Tuesday evening on this forecast track. Tropical storm conditions are possible over some parts of Hawaii starting on Tuesday. And, of course, the cone of uncertainty still has the Big Island in the path. Anything can happen. Here's where we are now. So everyone is on high alert right now, and especially in the Big Island, we've already seen quite a bit of rainfall from the last storm they had out there, Lane. But it does say a tropical storm watch is in effect for Aloha, Maui County, including the islands of Maui, Mulaki, Lanai, and Kahualau, and Hawaii County, of course. Tropical storm watch means that tropical storm conditions are possible in the watch area. A watch is typically issued 48 hours before the anticipated first occurrence of tropical storm force winds, conditions that make outside preparations difficult or dangerous. So there's another heads up a little bit earlier, but looking at our radar in motion here, and this hurricane does appear to make direct contact in this track, at least on the smaller islands and parts of the Big Island. So we're going to keep a close eye on this storm. And I do have some tracks here on Mike's weather page. We've got a few storms we're watching, actually, guys. Here we have Olivia. This is the path it's going to be taking. And here she is. Oh, wait, that's not Olivia, I don't think. That's Helene. This one right now, so far, it's impressive looking, Helene. But this one only affecting the islands outside of Africa, which have already passed that area. So this one might just spin away in the middle and curve up with Florence once she finally departs the East Coast. But the radar image for Olivia obviously is not available at this time. But we are keeping an eye on this storm just because we've already dealt with, in some spots on the Big Island, 48 inches of rain fell during Lane. So there's areas that do not need any more water. And this would be the third big rain event to happen in Hawaii this year in the last 3 to 4 months. We'll leave a link in the description. And this was talked about a few days ago. Actually, Henrik had brought this up on our show. It says, very heavy rainfall caused violent flash flood in the town of Cibola, Spain. It's a Toledo province on September 8th, 2018. There were no injuries or no fatalities, but the infrastructural damage was high, according to this report here. Weather stations registered around 1.18 inches of rain in just 15 minutes, in between 1.9 and 2.3 inches in just 1 hour, causing nearby creeks to break its banks. Raging floodwaters swept through the streets, causing destruction and dragging cars in its wake. Roads and buildings were severely damaged. The report states initial damage assessment suggests around 70 homes and 20 cars were damaged. See if I can get one of these to play. These images were all over social media on Facebook. I saw this video in several websites. It's like a rerun, folks. It's like we've seen this movie already once before. Almost on a weekly basis, we get video footage like this from all over the world. Turkey, Spain, Italy, France. We've seen this sign. I think Ukraine had floods like this recently. And then, of course, we had mudslides here in the States, but nothing like this violent yet. But we'll have to hang on to our hats for that one because there's a lot of moisture coming here from Florence, and we'll get into that just in a minute. Parts of South Africa blanketed in snow. Roads and mountains passes are closed. A cold front swept through parts of southern South Africa on September 6th and 7th, covering most of the Western Cape in snow and dropping heavy rain across the country. Due to the snow and slippery conditions, the Department of Transport closed the Lutzeburg Pass on the N9 between Middelburg and Graaf Reinhardt, and the Waterberg Pass on the R61 between Craddock and the Graaf Reinhardt in the Eastern Cape. All relevant emergency personnel were on high alert and would continuously monitor the road, said the department. Temperatures in West Cape dropped so low that it resulted in a blanket of snow covering areas in the Matrosberg Reserve. Snow could be seen on Sunday, September 9th, but most of the ground snow in the Matrosberg area had melted away. Absolutely Crazy looking pics. That's a heavy snow too, folks, the way it's accumulating on these branches. Just cold enough for snow. It wasn't super freezing, but just cold enough for the white stuff to get slushy. Unreal. Early snow? I'll have to do a little research and find out when that's typical. Let's take a look at the New York Times, the New York Lies, them in the Washington Post. Warning of risks of runaway global warming, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres on Monday called on global leaders to rein in climate change faster. He says if we do not change course by 2020, we risk missing the point where we can avoid runaway climate change, Mr. Guterres said at the United Nations headquarters here in New York. Climate change is the defining issue of our time, and we are at a defining moment, he said. Scientists have been telling us for decades. Over and over again, far too many leaders have refused to listen, he says, which is a lie, because before this current administration, they all listened to the lies. His remarks came with countries around the world far short of meeting the goals they set for themselves under the 2015 Paris Accord to reduce emissions that have warmed the planet over the last century, says them. The next round of climate negotiations is scheduled this year for Poland around December 3rd. They will talk about these countries that produce the larger parts of the global emissions, about how they need to cut down even more. Goes on to say the time has come for our leaders to show they care about people whose fate they hold in their hands. Without taking questions from reporters, we need to rapidly shift away from our dependence on fossil fuels. That's the actual opposite. If you want to go poor and you don't want to have any money to buy food and pay your rent, then yeah, let's stop burning fossil fuels and go rely on totally green. That's going to collapse the economy right there, my friends. Is that thinking right there. We have also, they keep talking about this Paris Agreement keeps temperatures from rising more 2 degrees Celsius from pre-industrial levels. Okay, so if 2 degrees Celsius is the tipping point, what are they so worried about? There's where we are. 0.19 above baseline. They don't even show 2 degrees Celsius here in this column. Period. Not there. So, meanwhile, global warming scientists everywhere are telling us that we are near the threshold. I saw a report, actually, Rob brought to my attention in our Discord, that NOAA is reporting that we are at 1.5 degrees above baseline, and not what Dr. Roy Spencer is showing here. Mr. Spencer is very respected in his work. He's been at it for a very long time, and he's not biased. In fact, he'll be one of the few people that will tell you that he thinks that he believes that man had some kind of hand in this recent warming period that we had just here in the last 15 years. So to me, if this guy was biased one way or the other, especially if he thinks that man is responsible for some of the warmth, then you would think that he would fudge the numbers to make them look higher to fit his agenda, like these global warmists. But this here is about as truthful as you can get when it comes to his work. And who do you trust? Do we trust Dr. Roy Spencer? Or do we trust NOAA? Mainstream out there will say NOAA, because they're the national, that's the big dog of weather right there. But reality is that we've caught the IPCC and NOAA fudging their numbers. They've admitted to this. There's people that have been caught doing it. Record temperatures that were reported earlier that are now being rejected because of a discrepancy in where those record temperatures were measured. So are we factoring in these numbers that get taken off the board Probably not. I'm pretty sure that NOAA and IPCC are not going to adjust those numbers, especially since that data does not support their agenda. But yet we've got the chief security here guy, what's his name? Antonio Guterres, this fella, who's telling us that we're at the tipping point. And by 2020, we're not going to be able to return. It's going to be catastrophic. Now, I'm looking at this chart from 1979 when it began. If what he's saying is true, that means that we are going to see a 1.81 degree increase in the next 3 years. Now, even at our peak at 0.8, okay, from 1979 to 2016, if you measure it from the start point there into the peak, the temperature went up 1.1 degrees Celsius from that point. So all of a sudden now, the UN climate guy here, this guy has been deemed the one who is going to speak on behalf of the UN for climate change. He's trying to convince folks right now that we're going to see a global warming of 1.18 degrees Celsius. It's not going to happen. That's catastrophic. Let's hold him to it. Let's hold this guy in the UN to this, because this one will be very obvious if that ever happened. If we ever had a temperature increase that intense. Because where we are right now, we're almost at baseline. Which a lot of you guys out there probably think we should probably be there around February of 2019. Maybe sooner. I was shocked for August's numbers. And then I looked at the data and I saw how cold it got in Australia. And they were the winners. They were the ones that brought this overall global average down. So just another example of how, and guys, this article right here, let me show you this. Look at this. It's just a bunch of regurgitated garbage. It's on the New York Times. It's on the WRAL.com. It's on CFR.org. It's on The Guardian. I mean, these are these stories that the AP spits out, and all these news websites and agencies pick it up, and they don't even bother to change the name of the title on certain of them. Again, these people don't think about that, because it's all about the masses. It's all about attracting and gathering the masses. And the more you see this in your Google research, you're going to think, well, this has got to be true. Look at all these returns for this. This has got to be the truth. Really worried about the future and how information will spread in the future if it's already this bad now. There's so many links here to try to tell you that we're on the brink of disaster. Catastrophic climate change is here, folks. That's what the UN is telling you. Because of warming. How are they going to explain this potentially brutally cold winter that a lot of, not just the old Farmer's Almanac is predicting, but a lot of scientists and a lot of weather climatologists out there are all agreeing about this? Look, we've seen how cold it got in Australia. They had a record cold start. I mean, they jumped right into winter. Freezing. So the UN's going to freak out and tell everybody that, basically we're going to warm almost the full 2 degrees Celsius in the next 2.5 years, when it took us from 79 to 16 to get 1.1 degrees Celsius above baseline. Or I'm just 1.1 degrees Celsius overall temperature gain total. Not forget about baseline. Ridiculous. Climate Depot. Under Trump administration, EPA workforce shrinks to levels not seen since the Reagan administration. Why? Because this administration is making the federal government smaller. That's A. which I know a lot of people who are okay with that. There's too much red tape. There's too much government. That's not how this country was ever intended to be ran, but that's another story for another channel. But the best thing here is that Mick Mulvaney said at a White House briefing that he considered that to be a waste of your money to go out and do that. We consider that a basic tie to his campaign. What they're talking about here is the White House on Thursday defended a proposal to slash federal funding for climate change programs, calling it a waste of your money. Mr. Mulvaney, he is the Office of Management and Budget Director. Now, this man is not making this decision because he's friends with Trump or he's a Republican or anything like that. He is making this decision because they have surrounded themselves with the facts and the data. And it's funny to me, ever since the EPA changed things there, how they are now doing things more transparent, where now they're demanding the evidence on where these climate scientists are coming up with that is accusing CO2 of being harmful pollutants in our atmosphere. And what's happening is the mainstream science community is refusing to be transparent about how they came to these critical decisions. So the EPA is saying, whoa, you want us to raise taxes and take the honest man, working man's money based on an answer that you've given me, and you won't let me see your source? You won't let me see the details? What they're doing at the EPA right now is responsible. They're saving you and me money. And when you've got the director of the budget saying it's a waste of our money, this climate change fund stuff, he's not saying it because he hates Obama or Democrats. He's saying it because he sees these papers. He sees the same thing that we try to show you folks. I'm just glad to see it happening. This has been consistent since this administration has taken over. And I don't think it has anything to do with this administration not caring about its environment, because there are new carbon capture technologies that are being put in place to help reduce air pollution. You know, I think it'd be foolish to say that man has nothing to do with emissions, CO2 emissions, because that's being blind. We know we burn fossil fuels. We put CO2 in the atmosphere. But when important laws are being made, and the claim is that CO2 is a pollutant and it's causing global warming, and the EPA finally has the right people running it and asks the fair question, well, let's see what you got. And that scientist or program or whatever that's making the claim gets scared about it and hesitates and delays and makes you go through all the paperwork and the red tape. Well, if you want to see it, you got to do this. Why not just show it? What are you hiding? The truth? You know, it's a difference of who can read these graphs and who can't. I heard another channel going after another channel for misinterpreting the data and clearly misreading it. And that's what it comes down to. And that's the sad part, is that these people that claim global warming and blue ocean events and all that, they don't know how to read the data. I'm not even sure. Fraud Beckwith, I'm not even sure how real this guy is. Something tells me that he's an assistant to a professor at this university and that he's not officially a climatologist. There's something fishy about this cat. But again, you got people like him who try to tout his title, and you're supposed to believe what he says because of his title. But even him himself is misinterpreting data and lying and telling everyone that the Arctic ice is disappearing right now, which is hilarious. All right, let's take a look at some current weather, and then we'll talk about Hurricane Florence and what she's doing. This is the remainder of Gordon right here. And it is in much cooler air, high pressure up here. So a lot of this tropical moisture didn't hold up very well. Now, Buffalo, Western Pennsylvania, Cleveland saw good rain. Baltimore got drenched yesterday. And we might have more rain heading to that area. In North Carolina, you're seeing remnant showers from the tropical moisture of Gordon as it's pulling moisture from the Gulf as we speak, all the way down to the southern part of Florida. So really, the Atlantic moisture, the tropical moisture, is being fed into this system and also combining with some more moisture out of the Gulf that's in Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama and Georgia. Other than that, kind of quiet in the Northwest. Actually, we've seen rain showers in this corner, in this part of the world here for the past 3 days, but nothing serious. No flooding issues. Thank God we're dry up here in Wisconsin. You guys need the break. But now our focus is going to shift once again to the Atlantic for Florence. And here is the latest on the GFS. Here we are on the 12th. That's a Wednesday. This thing looks like it's going to approach by Thursday into early Friday. The consistent thing about this storm is that it's staying in North Carolina. The last couple of days, these model runs have been consistent. Before we saw it slide far as south as southern South Carolina. Here's the concern. This storm will make landfall. A lot of forecasters are already talking about this storm will stall out. Friday, we start to see the storm surge, the wind, the rain bands. And I was talking to Maui before the show started tonight, and there's people that are already in the area that are worried tonight because of how the swell is already. And we haven't even seen the real storm surge from this. It's a Category 4 right now, folks. That's a strong storm. And we've kind of expected that because of how warm the water is right now in the mid-Atlantic. But here we are, Friday into Saturday. This storm is just sitting over North Carolina, the northern parts, and parts of Virginia. Into Sunday, more of the same. Monday, that storm is starting to move ever so slightly to the north, but we're still looking at rainfall in northern North Carolina on the coast. Monday, no movement. Not until Tuesday, where it finally starts to lighten up a little bit and move north. It re-intensifies again, but it's going to be off the coast at this point. So if there's any silver lining to this, it might be that Philadelphia, it's possible that you can get some heavy rain. I'm not saying that New Jersey and New York City won't get heavy rain from this storm. It's possible to see a quick 1 to 3 inches out of this. But the original thought was that we were going to see this storm just rake the entire East Coast from South Carolina all the way to Maine. And if there's a silver lining to this, is that the storm is definitely making a landfall into the East Coast up to around the New Jersey area, and then it starts to push away from the coast. But the big concern right now is Virginia and most of North Carolina's coast of the Atlantic Ocean. Mandatory evacuations have been issued in both states. And we've been talking about preparing for this storm a few nights now. And it is the only reason why it was because of how this storm continued to carry west. It continued to trend west. I thought this storm was going to get right about here and then go out to the Atlantic. Each time we had a model update, this storm continued to go to the west. And when we saw the model run the first time where it was going to rake the coast, I made it a call, and I really thought at that time that we needed to talk about people being aware of this situation and ready for this storm. Lots of rain to come with this one. This storm is going to sit here from Friday to Tuesday. And rain doesn't even leave the state of North Carolina until after Tuesday night, finally. And that's when the storm pulls away from the East Coast. Now, here's Helene right in front of it. Again, Helene does not become an issue for any one U.S. landfall. That's the first set of good news. On this latest update, I noticed that we have another storm that pops up in the Gulf here late. And it's not the one that they're already watching. The GFS is suggesting right here that we see sudden development in the middle of the Gulf. This is early, But with temperatures being as warm as they are in the Gulf, it's not surprising. And there it is. It's got a 60% chance of formation in 5 days. So the GFS and the NOAA is definitely agreeing that there will be a system here. Showers and thunderstorms over the northwestern Caribbean Sea, western Cuba, and the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico are also associated with the surface trough and are showing some signs of organization. This system is forecasted to move slowly northwestward across the Yucatan Peninsula on Tuesday with limited development. And we got Florence right now, Category 4, 140 mile an hour winds. That is making unfortunate stop here in the United States on the East Coast. Another disturbance that will have a chance to form, but this is one that will probably get absorbed into another system. Isaac is another storm that we have to watch. I believe that's Isaac. No, that's Helene. This is Isaac. This is what they think is going to happen with Isaac right now. And I'd say that if it continues like this, once it gets into warmer waters, especially approaching Jamaica, and if this storm survives, we could be dealing with another system heading into the Gulf. And this region is already had enough of tropical moisture. So let's hope for the best, that the storm either stalls out and completely dissipates, or takes a different trek, maybe curves up and goes back in the Atlantic. Who knows? But anytime, right now it's not a major concern. It's not a major storm, anything like that. However, it is something to kind of work or to kind of watch. Tropical storm type winds, nothing hurricane yet. I want to find my map. There we go. Actually, hurricane, it is a hurricane. It is now a Category 1, 75 mile an hour winds as of 8 o'clock tonight Eastern time. So we've got Isaac to watch. We've got the new development. We've got, of course, Olivia here in Hawaii. We got to watch that in the next several days, the next 3 days. By Tuesday overnight, we should see this approach to land. And then they're saying by early morning Wednesday when it might make landfall to the northern part of the Big Island. And then we've got to watch Isaac heading in through the Caribbean to Jamaica, and possibly from there, we don't know. The cone is already really widespread by Saturday at 2 p.m. So this is a storm that could be, if it does develop in the Gulf, it could be in the middle of the Gulf sometime late week next week. And maybe that's the one they're counting on to get its stuff together. Here's Helene. Very impressive. Or is that Floater? Here's Florence. Very well defined eye. Very well put together storm. There's Helene. It's moving right now, I think at just 10 miles an hour is the speed of this storm. So we will continue to monitor this, guys. All we can say to you on the East Coast is you must prepare now if you live in North Carolina, and northern North Carolina and Virginia. That looks like to be the worst affected areas from this storm. Not to scare anybody, but this is looking like an intimate situation for you guys on the East Coast. We can only hope for the best and hope these storms kind of clear themselves up a little bit. But I wish that was the case for Florence. I wish I could sit here and say, guys, there's a chance that this storm is going to get weak. But the fact remains is that we are over warmer waters right now. Let's go ahead and take a look at our ocean temps. As you can see, the waters are much, much warmer the closer this thing gets to the East Coast. Same with the Gulf. These are going to be the areas we're going to have to watch. Now, I think after Florence, when Florence moves out, I think it clears a chamber in the Atlantic. I think the East Coast, so far, I don't think that we're going to have to worry about another East Coast storm in the near future. Now, I'm not saying something couldn't pop up in October, but it looks like when Florence does leave that it will take Helene with it and will clear the chamber, so to speak, in the Atlantic Ocean. But this is why we are seeing the intensification of this storm to a Category 4. The water temperatures where they are right now. East tropical Atlantic temperature anomaly risen just a little bit to negative 0.648, only up a little bit. But that's the East tropical Atlantic. Take a look at the El Nino, believe it or not. It is at the area where El Nino would be favored at 0.258, just barely. And the North Atlantic is leveling out right at the negative 0.5 below baseline mark. So lots to talk about. We got to keep our eyes on Florence. We got to keep our eyes on Olivia. We need to keep a watchful eye on Isaac. And then we have possible tropical development within the next 5 days as well. So just a lot to keep, from all summer long, we've been kind of talking about worldwide events, flooding, hail. We've seen that all summer. And now we get towards the peak of hurricane season. And boy, it has stepped up. Last year we saw activity for most of the summer in the Atlantic and the tropics. Nothing ever really came to fruition until really late September, late August, early September. However, we are seeing quite a bit of activity right now. It'll be interesting to correlate everything with their solar storms, with sunspots, with coronal holes over the next 5 to 12 days on these storms and see how that all plays out as well. All right, I'm going to check in with my producer, Mari, check in with her and see if we have anything to report tonight. Mari, how's everybody doing?
Fantabulous, Jake. I'm trying to behave myself as usual in the chat. Did you get that evil laugh thing? Okay, anyway, I'll fill you in after. Anyway, we got a lot of people just sort of worried about these hurricanes. And, there is good reason to be concerned. I read an article today comparing the traits of this storm to Harvey with the sheer amount of moisture. And then the stalling, and then also the Carolinas have already gotten a significant amount of rain. The soil's already saturated, so with these winds, the article that I read today was saying there's going to be probably quite a bit of trees down, power lines. The wind will cause more damage with the saturated soil, and then all this moisture on top of it. It's very concerning to me, this storm. So please people, be careful, play it safe. If you can get out, and just, I'd rather err on the side of safety and not sit there and take pictures and be dangerous, please. Because we actually have people in the Carolinas in the chat right now saying they want to vlog it, and as cool as that sounds, this storm is not anything to play with. And just look at Harvey. Back, what was that? When did Harvey fall?
Right about early September, late August.
So it was last year.
Yep.
So just be safe and prep what you can. Apparently, this person in the chat said they're just wiped out. The supplies yep. in the stores. So yep. It's just worrying. Brace yourself, people.
And one more thing before we leave tonight, I almost do that. Sorry. We talked about this one last night or the other night, Saturday night, Typhoon Mangut. Just to give you an update, guys, this thing will be a super typhoon as it goes towards the Philippines and Taiwan. So, we'll get more on this story as it develops. But that is the last thing that region needs. And look at the size of this thing. So super typhoon, that's 150 mile an hour winds and above. Take a look at its track really fast. Can I zoom on that? Let's see if I can. Let's zoom that up a little bit. So right now as we speak, it is impacting Guam in its area right now. Hopefully everyone is taking what precautions they can to stay safe in this storm. And as it continues to trek through, by the time we get to the Philippines and Taiwan, we are talking about a super typhoon, winds over 150 miles an hour. So we will keep our eyes. There's so much to watch right now, guys. We will definitely keep our eyes on everything. Again, thank you for tuning in. We will be back tomorrow night around the same time, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Until then, we will talk soon and take care, guys.